Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to the Accelerating Accessibility Through Partnerships. Thank you so much for being here. I know that we are standing between you and lunch, so we will get to that just as soon as we can, but we so much appreciate you taking the time to join this conversation today. My name is Sunday Parker. I lead our Access Technology program for the Microsoft Accessibility team. And in my role, I work to empower nonprofit organizations and the disability community they serve through technology. And so as you may be able to notice, I'm a little bit far from home today, and I had about 18 hours on the way over just to think about what an incredible opportunity it is to be here today. This is my first time in Africa, and I just so much appreciate the warm welcome that I've received. Thank you. But as someone with a complex mobility disability, I can say that I would not be here today without accessibility. And of course, there are the ways that we think about accessibility, from the built environment, the ramp that got me on stage today, the lifts that I took between me and the 3 connections that I had in order to arrive. But I also think about accessibility in terms of the opportunities that I've received through access to healthcare, access to an education, access to equal opportunity in the workplace, and in addition, the community around me of my friends and my family and my peers and my colleagues. So I just want to thank you for joining the Inclusive Africa Conference and being here to empower your own communities who have disabilities. I, as I mentioned, work for Microsoft, and Microsoft believes that accessibility is a fundamental human right. And I mentioned all of the accessibility that I have received throughout my life, and Microsoft has been working on accessibility for nearly my entire life. And there has been so much innovation that has come out of products and partnerships and services and programs that we have. And I am joined here today by this lovely group of panel, and to really illustrate how partnerships are so crucial as we work to bridge the disability divide, which is what the World Bank has coined as the societal exclusion of the nearly 1 billion people with disabilities around the world. And without partnerships, we would not be able to scale and truly be able to accelerate accessibility across the company. So I'm really pleased to introduce you to our panelists today. First, we have Grace Chikawi. Grace is the country lead for the Hunger Project in Malawi, which is an organization committed to the sustainable end of world hunger. She holds a bachelor's in nutrition and food science, and she's also served as HIV nutrition and gender officer for THP Malawi. Before joining the Hunger Project, Grace worked as a nutritionist, a program manager, and a secondary school teacher. Thank you so much, Grace, for being here. Next, we have Martin Chieti. He has been promoting the rights of education, information, inclusion of people with disabilities in Africa for over 25 years. As we were meeting today, we were joking about the internet searches we all did on each other, and it's hard to find an area within the vision space in Africa that Martin has not been involved in. He is also the Africa lead for the resource person on Marrakesh Treaty. He supports the work of the World Blind Union, the International Council for the Education with Visual Impairment, the DAISY Consortium, BENTEC, and several other organizations towards the ratification and enforcement of blind and low vision progress in Africa. Next panelist we have is Javentus Dorina. Javentus is the executive director of the Ghana National Association of the Deaf, whose mission is to mobilize members, remove communication barriers, and advocate for equal opportunities for deaf people in Ghana. He holds a Master's of Law with a concentration of human rights. He was also the first deaf person to graduate from law school in Ghana. Yeah. He is also a current student who is actually being called to the bar very shortly. And so an extra appreciation today for being here and taking you away from your studies. Next, we have Emily Sheldon. Emily serves as a co-founder and CEO for the African Health Innovation Center, dedicated to the utilization of innovation, entrepreneurship, and to improve the health outcomes in Ghana. Through her work with the AHIC, she is also a mentor for the Sustainable Health Initiative at Yale Institute, an ambassador for the Master of Public Health program in Vanderbilt, as well as serving as a board member for multiple African health startups. And last but not least, we have Winnie Karanu. Winnie is the philanthropies lead for the Sub-Saharan African at Microsoft. She's previously was the business development manager at the Africa Transformation Office here in Nairobi. She's done several volunteering initiatives, including My Skills for Africa, the United Nations, and the AISEC. As I mentioned, our partners are so crucial as we work towards bridging the disability divide. And I want to take a moment to allow each of you to do your own introductions and share a little bit more about your organizations and the work that you're doing. Grace, we can start with you.
Hello, everyone. Hello? Yeah, so as mentioned, my name is Grace Chikowi from Malawi, under the Hunger Project in Malawi. We've been working in Malawi since 1999 with the aim of ending world hunger. And in our mission of ending world hunger, we use a holistic approach because we understand that hunger is caused by various factors, including different inequalities. And because of that, our work works at making sure we bridge or we work on solving the inequalities that are existing. In Malawi, we are working on improving food and nutrition security. We're working on improving access to healthy services, education, and others. So in the project that we're doing with Microsoft, we have included, we are targeting 70,000, a population of 70,000 people with the aim of improving access to services for them through digital connection. We're calling it meaningful access to internet connectivity. So we have what we call epicenters. An epicenter, as in a word from geography, which means like a source where a volcano erupts from. So in our context, it is a center where development work is erupting from. So we define an epicenter as a cluster of villages. Our approach is emphasized on community-led. So the community comes together, a cluster of villages comes together, they build the epicenter, and they come together to do various development activities. So one of the interventions that we're doing is to bring all the training materials that we do in agriculture from the Ministry of Agriculture, upload them on the internet, as well as access to information on health and everything that we train the communities on. We upload them on internet, and then the community members are able to come and access that information for free. And to make this project more sustainable, for those people who want information beyond just the basic development activities, interventions in agriculture, nutrition, health, education, they can pay an extra so that we still continue after the project phases out. The community can run the project on their own. So they pay a little something for other information access. this project has been very helpful to us because we all know that when COVID hit and schools were closed, those who were in the cities had access to educational materials and they could continue doing their school through online. It was very challenging in our communities where we saw a lot of girls just being idle. And as a result of them being idle, most of them got pregnant and some of them dropped out of school. And we were very excited to partner with Microsoft to have these girls and all the other community members have access to online education materials. So we're excited that right now we have so many girls and boys patronizing the Epicenter to access educational information as well as any other information that gives them an opportunity to economic empowerment and other important information that they need. Thank you so much.
Martin?
Thank you very much. It's indeed a great pleasure to be here and to speak about accessibility and access, and to speak about the kind of work Microsoft is doing with partners. DESI Consortium is an organization that brings together a number of institutions that provide library and information services to people who are primarily blind, but also those with print disabilities. And the work of the DESI Consortium is really to respond to the Marrakesh Treaty, which seeks to facilitate access to published works by people with print disabilities. For those who may not know what print disability is, it's a collection of disabilities that hinder a person's ability to use, manipulate, read, and benefit from the printed work. So it includes people who are blind, people who are low vision, people with such other visual challenges like dyslexia, as well as people with the physical disabilities that hinder them from holding or manipulating books, muscular dystrophy, spinal feeder, and such other disabilities. So all those people do not benefit from the printed book, and the Marrakesh Treaty was adopted in 2003 by the Diplomatic Conference of WIPO to facilitate countries, to enable countries facilitate access to published works in accessible formats. So the work of DESI specifically is to, from the point of creation, was to facilitate a kind of uniformity in a standard that would enable the creation and utilization of accessible books. And today, the DESI Consortium develops tools for creation of accessible digital content, does trainings, a lot of trainings, and support hand-holding organizations in the creation of accessible books, and also supports the creation or the development of standards in the creation of accessible books. Together with its partners and friends, DESI has made available over 800,000 books in accessible formats. So we'll be talking a little more about what we've been doing with Microsoft in the next round of our input. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm pleased to be here. My name is Juventus Durena, and as Sunday explained, I'm the director for Ghana National Association for the Deaf, NAD. I'm more popularly called Director One. I came here to explain to you And my possibility of coming here and then coming with my interpreter here, I feel more included in this workshop. Today, I'm going to tell you a little about my organization, the work that we do, how we try to make accessibility for deaf people, the young deaf people, and then the girls. One common thing is, for 48 years now, we focused on deaf people. We target deaf people of all age, from childhood to adulthood. We don't specifically choose them, especially we focus more on students who are in education. We have 16 regions in Ghana. We have some stakeholders that we work with. Our members are involved in full-time in whatever that we are working with. We work with the blind, the physically challenged, all the disabled associations in Ghana. Deaf people there are some deaf people who are amputated. We have different stakeholders and then institutions that we work with, the Ministry of Health, the Ghana Health Service, the employment sector. We make sure we work with all these people to have equal opportunity and then access for deaf people. And then the public services. We want to access information, healthcare, other services that is going to help the deaf. One area that we are focusing more now is education. The reason is we are targeting deaf children and we want them to be involved fully and then they will have a better future. There's not much about deaf people being done in terms of accessibility. For example, we are trying to collect with different institutions and then have access and the best way that the deaf people can communicate using sign language. At the same time, we also want to see how best they can get the quality teaching and learning materials. We're also doing some things on research to see how best deaf people can also be involved in answering some specific questions when it comes to research, issues that appear or emanate. That is why we are all here. Sometimes we have some questions for the deaf people, developing questions. It becomes very difficult to respond to the questions individually. So we are trying to see how best we can use technology to help deaf people to read and then answer questions themselves when it comes to research. And then we want them to be independent as they do it. Around the sexual and reproductive health, we are working on innovation and then ways that we can make sure that our members, especially the deaf girls, can get the best information ever on sexual and reproductive health, which is going to be good for them. Comparing it to the mixed technology and then a positive human resources, we want to blend these two and then deaf people may get information on that. Recently, we tried to see how best we can help our members to access higher education using technology, accessibility on education and inclusiveness for a deaf person. For example, a deaf person may go to a lecture with no technology. How is the deaf person going to participate in class? When there's a group discussion, when there's a Zoom meeting, we have to involve technology. And then most times we don't even have interpreters. We want to involve the deaf people fully. In Africa, AHIC has also helped us, and then we being partners with them, Emily is here, we are working together with the project to support and then get maybe Microsoft support on how we can focus on how best ways technology can help deaf young children to be able to access. When we assess, it's difficult for them to read questions and understand simple and as the normal hearing people do. In this innovation, we want to try and see how best we can change things so that these deaf people can read and then use technology to read themselves. If it's going to be a video or it's going to be a closed caption title that we're going to use that they can read and then understand well. As I am here, I want to stop here and then the next partner will talk about it, and then as the program goes on, we'll continue. Thank you.
Pass the microphone.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Emily Sheldon. As Sunday mentioned, I'm the co-founder and CEO of the African Health Innovation Center, We are based in Accra, Ghana. And thank you so much to Sunday, to Microsoft, and to the Inclusive Africa Conference for having us today. AHIC, as we are more commonly known, has been active in Ghana for the past 4 years. And we like to say that we sit at the intersection of public health, healthcare, innovation, and entrepreneurship. That means we do a lot of different things. We might be training startups or small businesses that have a health focus. We also work really closely with government, academic institutions, hospitals, and UN agencies to give them training and innovation and design thinking. And we do a lot of community connections, bringing together partners from different areas, whether that's the private sector, academia, the government, so that we're all having conversations instead of working in our siloed areas. Back in 2018, we did some ecosystem mapping. We looked around at our community and we said, who is missing from the entrepreneurship conversation? And there were really 2 different communities that emerged for us. The first were parents. We found that a lot of individuals, once they had families, were leaving the startup ecosystem because it wasn't stable enough for them. And so we developed a program called Innovating Parenthood, which does HR work, develops lactation spaces, things like that, to make sure that parents could still be involved. And second was people with disabilities. Because we don't have as many regulations in Ghana and they aren't as strictly enforced, we found that many entrepreneurship community events, workshops, training programs simply weren't accessible. And while we finally reached the co-creation stage of understanding that if you want to develop something for someone in a wheelchair, you should include someone in a wheelchair in that process, what we have not done is understood that someone in a wheelchair might want to build a business about sanitation, and they should have access to be able to do that. So we developed an initiative called Designing for Access, which oversees a number of disability inclusion, innovation, and accessibility programs by working directly in partnership with disabled communities in Ghana, especially with the Ghana National Association of the Deaf and a couple of other partners. Through that, one of our biggest projects has been in collaboration with UNICEF, where we teach entrepreneurship and employability to deaf and deaf-disabled youth in Ghana's Schools for the Deaf. It's been really an exciting project, and we're looking at growing it in the next few years. NAD has been one of our closest partners in that project. But we've also found that we continue to run into barriers. And one of the biggest barriers is that deaf youth are often not given the opportunity to speak for themselves. That when we try to administer surveys or ask them questions about the project, a teacher or someone else will step in to try and answer for them. And so we're excited to be partnering with Microsoft on a new pilot project to develop our surveys in video format using Ghanaian Sign Language so that we can directly ask students about their own opinions and their own experiences and give them the opportunity to respond in sign language as well. As we've started doing our projects, some of these simple things like surveys are what is preventing our projects from being able to scale. We can't hire an interpreter to individually interview every single deaf student in Ghana. But if we can use technology to be able to create a video and then ask students that way in their own language, it gives us a new form of access at scale, which is something we're really, really excited about. Finally, accessibility is a very close personal issue to me as well. I have a rare chronic health condition myself, and it's made me really passionate about helping people navigate patient pathways, communicate with their doctors, especially in a West African context, where we often don't feel comfortable asking our doctor questions. And I also am very lucky to be a parent to 2 incredible children. My older son is based in Ghana. He requires a little bit of additional support and some more structure and education. And so he attends one of Ghana's only inclusive education schools, where they use small class sizes, they have PT, occupational therapy, speech and language therapy, and mental health therapy built into the services that they provide for students. And I was privileged a few years ago to become the parent to a 3-year-old girl now. My daughter was born 3 years ago, and she was unexpectedly born with a very rare, complex condition. So my daughter is profoundly deaf. She uses a wheelchair full-time. She uses a feeding tube full-time, and she requires a lot of support to be able to work within a mainstream school environment. It's taught me a lot, working regularly with therapists, with partners, and also with other families. And so families are also at the center of a lot of the work that we do at AHIC. I'll stop there. I'm very excited. Thank you so much for having us today.
Hi, everyone. My name is Winnie Carano. I'm the philanthropies lead for Sub-Saharan Africa at Microsoft. And accessibility is also quite personal. And for me, it was a temporal disability, so after an accident. And I wasn't able to see and use my arm for around 4 months, on my left eye and my arm for a few months. And I think that made me very sensitive to the idea of disability. And for me, disability means freedom, the ability to be able to participate and fully participate and independently to be able to access all kinds of different services, right? If it doesn't matter if it's education, if it's transportation, if it's public health, if it's being able to, travel, for example. So it's being able to ensure that you're able to have a full life. And I think for me, even, I think I remember when I just had the accident, that's when I was applying for this job. And so I applied for this role when I had half my eyesight and also barely could type with my right hand. So I think for me, it's also quite an interesting experience to be able to, contribute back and give back in a way that is very personal to me. So my work focuses a lot on digital inclusion. So we look at how do we ensure that no one is left behind as you're thinking about digital transformation, people adopting technology, and then being able to, build their livelihoods around it. How do you make sure that people are not left behind? As a mission for Microsoft on empowering every person and every organization to achieve more, we ensure that we are not able to making sure that everyone is able to participate in the digital economy. And so our work focuses on driving skills development programs, working with nonprofits. So we look at nonprofits in 2 ways. So one, we provide free and discounted technology to all nonprofits as a standard. And so working with organizations across the globe in trying to identify what are the solutions that nonprofits need, and then how do you ensure we can co-create those solutions with them in being able to achieve the causes that they care about in the society. The second piece is on being able to drive digital skilling programs. So we work as well with nonprofits to be able to partner with other organizations. So if you think about governments, international organizations, development partners, our customers, our partners, everyone is very interested in thinking about digital inclusion. And so we work with them in being able to identify what are the skill sets that are missing in the market and how do we ensure that we enable young people and people who are underserved in being able to get the skills that they need. And then connected to opportunities. So in thinking about skills for jobs and not for skilling, but making sure that we're able to improve the livelihoods of the young people. Thank you.
Thank you. And Grace, I'd love to circle back to you. And you are a partner of Microsoft Airband directly, the Hunger Project is, and you've worked with the team for a number of years focused on digital equity and particularly on the connectivity piece, which is really important in the context of Malawi, with just 14% of people in Malawi who have access to the internet. And when you factor in gender and disability, the gap widens even further. And when I was introduced to the Hunger Project over a year ago now, one of the areas that we identified was a really great opportunity was to how to thread disability and accessibility into the epicenter model. Can you share a little bit about how accessibility has been threaded into the model, and also what has been the community response?
Thank you so much. So like I've been saying, we've been working since 1999, but we're not as sensitive to issues of inclusiveness in terms of people with disabilities until when we first had a project which was particularly focusing on improving livelihood for people with disabilities. But even then, in terms of our approach, we needed people to be physically available for them to get trainings and learn and implement the things that we require them to do. That already was an exclusion factor. So when we partnered with Microsoft, we have equipment like tablets and computers that have information and have tools which make it easier. They're user-friendly for people with different disabilities. So these people are able to learn and get all the information that others are able to get in the physical meetings through digital. And I have an exciting a story to share about one of our partners with disability who, when they started accessing information on internet, they went extra beyond the interventions that we are promoting. So they were looking for information on cassava. So the area where we're doing this project, people don't grow cassava. So this man with disability was on his laptop checking information randomly, and then he focused on cassava production. He eventually learned the skills and everything, and he implemented. He now has a big field of cassava. And that was really very special because soon after we implemented, you heard about Cyclone Freddy that hit Malawi. And most of the crops were washed away. Most of the things that people had were washed away. And yet the cassava was resilient to the flooding and does not require a lot of farm inputs in it. It survived, and it is the hope for food security in his household, and it has set a lesson to the rest of the community. Now, this is the power of inclusion. He is the only person that thought of cassava production, and he decided to take a risk of implementing something which has never been done in the area, and yet it has served as a way, as an alternative to ensuring food security in the community. So there is more, and if you include everyone in the process, you gain more. We've been doing skills development in the community, with the youth, empowering them with skills like in tailoring, carpentry, construction, and others. One of the ladies, one of the girls that attended the youth empowerment goes on internet, learns how to design different formats of clothes, and then she's getting a very good market in the community just because she now has access to information, access to designing lessons beyond what she basically learned during the course. This is making her have economic opportunities, but also empower herself with even more skills. We really appreciate this partnership, and we're so privileged that the equipment was very expensive. Yesterday, someone spoke about how much budget goes to disability. It is very rare that normally people would justify not including others just because inclusion is expensive. So we're so grateful to Microsoft for investing in those rural communities. She mentioned that already by being rural is an excluding factor, and by being disabled, you are even more excluded. So with that investment, it is really a plus, and it sets a model in our country. People are learning from us. We're partnering with the government. The government is excited about the project. They are also trying to even support by bringing in more information, like the Ministry of Health, to upload information on the gadgets so that people have as much information as they can. So we're really grateful for the investment that we're having and doing into the community. Thank you.
Our panelists, I'll give you 3 minutes to wrap up, kindly.
Okay. Let's maybe do rapid fire down the line. I'd love to hear, Martin, can you talk a little bit more about the issues surrounding book famine?
Good. Thank you very much. The book famine basically refers to the fact that less than 10% of all the published works are available in accessible formats. And in developing countries, it's estimated that less than 1% of those books are available in formats that can be accessed by people with print disabilities. So a lot of work has been being done to increase the number of books that are available and accessible, thanks to the Marrakesh Treaty and the efforts of several organizations that are working in the field. Unfortunately, despite the increase in digital content, people with print disabilities, especially in low-resourced countries where access to high-tech devices is limited, access to electricity and access to internet are all limited, those people cannot optimally use books as is expected. And so what we have done as DESI Consortium together with Microsoft is to develop a tool, an app that enables digital content to be made accessible through a pipeline. We call it the pipeline app. Through a few clicks that makes the content available in a set of formats that can enable someone, even in a low-resourced country, to be able to read that book. I have in my pocket, for instance, a small, almost standard MP3 player, which so,
switches that turn them off if they overheat or tip over.
So this is a device that can take a lot of books. It has an internal memory, it has an external memory capacity, and using the pipeline app, for instance, you can feed books, dozens of books into this device and hand over to children. The device is just about $30, and it has a solar panel. And this is not the device that we are promoting with Microsoft. We're just demonstrating how we are changing the way people are accessing books in low-resourced countries. We have interesting programs running in places like Tigray in Ethiopia, where an organization there is using these devices and the technology we are creating to generate books and hand over those books to learners in the schools and enable them to read. It's not only for learners, but also for adults. And beyond that, we have also localized Braille during the first round with Microsoft, localized Braille for Chichewa language and Swahili. And now those Braille codes are available for free, and they are going to be integrated into Braille production software. You can find the Pipeline app in the Microsoft Store, and with that, you are able to create accessible content for a range of devices. Thank you very much.
Yeah, this project has been one of a really great success story coming out of our AI for Accessibility grant program. So if you're interested in hearing more about that, please come find me or Martin afterwards, and we can talk more about that. But switching over to another one of our recent grantees for the Accessibility Nonprofit Tech Accelerator is the African Health Innovation Center and NAD. I'd love to hear from you how technology is able to empower your organization, and specifically the Tech for Independent Communication project, briefly. And open to Juventus, yeah.
Thank you, Sunday. So as I explained before, we are focusing on deaf people, and mostly they are the one at a disadvantage. As Grace explained, recently 2021, we did a population census. We had over 5,000 people in Ghana who are deaf. That is a huge number, and most of them are youth of the school-going age. So here is a case that they need access to help them to be able to interact with their society, also interact with other people in their community. So the world is moving to a digital era. And this means that we have to also move with them, else we'll be left behind. And inclusion is very important. 2018, I had the opportunity to come to Kenya here for, I came to this same hotel. There was a project from SAFE, S-A-A-F, which include research and designing ways that they can give their research works to the deaf people to answer. And then when we sent the research out, it was not, the result that came was not that good. So we decided that we use technology so that the deaf people can answer independently. 2021, we had a research on mental health, and then we designed questionnaires and gave to the deaf people. The feedback we had on the answers were not that good. So we got confused. We asked ourselves, what happened? Was it difficult for the deaf people to answer the question, or they didn't understand the questions themselves? So this time we want to partner with AHIC, and then we want to see if there will be an innovation way that we can help the deaf people answer these questions, then access information in the normal format, if there is going to be a sign language, or they may draft a question which will be in a simple format for the deaf people to answer. This should be involved or included with technology. By using a video with technology, it can be easy for them if they can be put on their smart laptops or tablets that they can use. I think these challenges that are emanating is coming from that. The project that we are doing, we see it is good. This video production is going to be good. They will read and then they will express themselves. And then we are going to get the experiences that we want to get from the deaf people. As Emily is here, is going to also elaborate more on that. Thank you.
I will just speak very quickly. I know it's time for lunch. You know, I think that and this is not something I need to explain to people at this conference, dignity is a prerequisite to true accessibility, right? And that's a challenge to explain to people sometimes, that we don't just need to make a program happen or get feedback from participants, but we need to do so in a way that empowers people to speak for themselves and express their own opinions and give their own feedback. And as we have had projects working with the deaf community, there's so many people who say, oh, just have someone fill a survey for them, just get the results. And for us, that's not good enough. We need to hear directly from people, the same way I express for myself the experiences that I have. And we're very lucky that our partners at UNICEF have stood with us in this desire to make sure that the deaf community is able to speak, express themselves. And finding Microsoft in the Nonprofit Tech Accelerator was it was a very big deal for us, because we knew how at a small local level to make sure that that dignity was upheld. We had an interpreter interview every single student we worked with about their experience in their own language. But how do you do that at scale? How do you make accessibility and dignity happen when you're working with 2,000 or 10,000 people instead of with 20? And that's where Microsoft has stepped in by allowing us to work on this pilot program where we can use tablets to ask in video format or through very, very simple written questions about people's background, about their experience, about how the program has gone. And by doing that, by using these tablets, which can be shared and moved around and live full-time with NAD so they can be used on any project, what it's allowing us to do is scale programs that otherwise would have had to stay with only 10 or 20 people. And that is where technology is truly making a change in how we do our work.
Yeah, and what a great note to end on. And I just really cannot express enough how much external partnerships are so crucial to the mission at the Microsoft Accessibility team in order to really, truly accelerate accessibility and really be able to reach people right in the communities that they are. And each of you are working on such meaningful work, and we're just so appreciative of the partnership. And another way that we do partner is within our own organization, right? I mentioned Microsoft Airband. Winnie is here from the Microsoft Philanthropies team, and that is so crucial as we're able to scale accessibility across the Microsoft organization, is to work internally. And I know we're very over time and our mics might get cut off right now, but I do just want to give, Winnie, could you maybe share a little bit about how people can learn more about Microsoft Philanthropies and what is available for all NGOs and how you're looking to partner more with the accessibility team?
All right, just before that, 30 seconds, please, 30 seconds. We have to reconvene at 2 p.m.
Okay.
30
We
seconds.
promise.
I'll try my best. Microsoft Philanthropies fundamentally works with nonprofits. So we work with them in being able to empower them to enable the ecosystem. So we work with them in giving them grants, access to content, access to tools that they can use to be able to scale the work that, like for example, the work that they're doing in Ghana, for example. And so our work is to be able to see how then do we scale the work that we're doing in accessibility. And so one of the ways we're really working very closely with Sunday is trying to see how do we take a lot of the work that they're doing in the accelerator and also the work that we're doing with the nonprofits for scaling, in being able to bring those two worlds together and ensure that we can be able to work together to access people with disabilities. And so clearly we're in high-level conversations right now with like Next Step Foundation, for example, the MasterCard Foundation as well, Sightsaver. So a lot of people are very interested in being able to access the content and the tools that we have. And I think I'm really very excited as well to be able to participate and give access to these opportunities. But also at the same time, I think what she said was very critical, Emily, about dignity. And so bringing that dignity through improved livelihoods. And that means them accessing economic opportunities that they can be able to access jobs or being able to start their own businesses. And I think that's also really fundamental to us, is how do we bring that dignity back to the people with disabilities, but also young people, refugees, and others to be able to ensure that they can participate in the digital economy. So thank you.
Thank you, and just
All right.
a huge round of applause to all the panelists. Thank you.